Welcome to another edition, another episode of the podcast that you're tuning into, you're listening to, you've downloaded, and now you're about to get educated. Blending the Family. I am your host, Tommy Maloney. Thanks for coming by. Coming to you from Bloomington, Illinois, home of, not Bloomington, but Illinois is my original birth home. And you might be wondering, Tommy, what is Blending the Family? Thanks for asking. On Blending the Family, we talk about co-parenting. We talk about possibly what's a good wine, going on that first date after the divorce, and our topic today, we're going to talk a couple of topics. Actually, excuse me. I'm going to have some more of my green papaya green tea from Panera. Carl Roberts is on this episode, and Carl has an app called Split Smart, and we talk about that towards the middle of this episode, but we also talk about child support, 4 steps in divorce, and if you've listened to this podcast for a while, thank you. If this is your first time listening, thank you. And I asked the last question. The last question is, what has changed for you the past 12 months? What has changed for you the past 12 months? Oh, crap. The heater's on. Hold on. Let me go turn it off. Hold on. Well, that was funny. Hold on. I totally forgot to turn the heater off. Wait for it. Wait. Well, that's annoying. That is really annoying. Why isn't it turned off yet? Oh. There we go. All right. So where were we? I totally forgot. Talking about the last question. And when I asked Carl the last question, his answer really shocked me. And so I hope you listen to this episode all the way through and get to hear that answer. And as I stated, he also has a app out there called Split Smart. And where was I going? I was going to wait. Anyway. Well, hold on. I'm so confused. Anyway, it's the heater thing. It threw me off. I was doing so well. But are you doing good? I hope you're staying healthy. I hope. I have a question for you. Anybody out there get a pet during COVID? So our puppy Otis, he's doing really well. Unfortunately, because I am traveling again for the day job, he's missing me. I'm missing him, and I have to get reports almost every day on how he's doing because he's so used to being able to, wander the house, and I take him outside, and several times during the day, and now he's unfortunately stuck in his kennel. So I feel bad for the guy. I really do. And I feel bad for a lot of the pets that are going through that. You get adopted, and then you're doing so happy. What kind of English is that? I don't know. You're doing well, and then your owner goes back to their work. That's just not fair. So I'm hoping less than 6 months for me with the day job. We've got some things coming up, and I can't really say much yet. So please stay tuned. I mentioned Carl let me tell you, because I really don't have a lot to say. I'm actually taking a lunch break. I rarely take a lunch break, but I want to get this episode produced and out to the masses by Friday instead of struggling and not doing it. So, anyway, let's talk about Carl. Let me bring up his info. That's not it. That's what. We won't go there. There we go. All right. Carl Roberts, divorced father of two, 18 and 16 years old. And here's one of the things we talk about. 9, yes, 9, just like in Ferris Bueller, 9-year high conflict divorce and custody battle survivor. Yes, 9 years. Carl was in court. Oh my gosh. But he's also an advocate, a lobbyist for family court and child support reform. Colorado co-chair for National Parents Organization, which you can find at nationalparentsorganization.org. Commissioner on Colorado Child Support Review. Commissioner on Colorado Child Support Review Commission. Say that 10 times fast. I can't even say it one time. Founder and CEO of Split Smart at splitsmart.com. Online organization tool for divorce. And you can find Carl on LinkedIn, and that's Carl T. Roberts. Facebook, Split Smart app, and then on the Twitter, Split Smart app. So there you go. There's the social for Carl. And interesting conversation, really interesting, and especially learning the history of child support. Didn't know really the history of child support, and Carl enlightened us on that. So we're gonna just move along, and as Terry Crews would say, your success is my success. Well, again, Carl, thanks for doing this, and I'm super excited to talk to you about the world of divorce. And hopefully today we can help some families out. How's that, Carl?
There's a lot of families that could use a lot of help.
This is true. So I want to start off with this because I think a lot of people predicted one or two things that was going to happen because of the pandemic. And number one would be possibly more babies are going to be happening in 2021. But the flip side to it was also more divorces. And sure enough, there's been some articles coming out saying that because people were quarantined together, they realized we weren't meant to be with each other. So with that being said, Carl, we're going to go through families that have kids, they're going to get divorced, possibly have to go through family court. What are your thoughts of what possibly is going to happen with the way the world is right now, the way the world is changing, the way family courts are going to possibly have more cases, more loads than ever before?
It's such a what a big question. Court in general. I mean, it just so I'm certainly in my career, my history, my life experiences. I certainly have developed several philosophies that has brought me to where I am today. And when you look at people who go through a good divorce and end up with a happily ever after just separately, versus those who go through an ugly divorce and then they just kind of end up miserable. I kind of see that the one difference being between a good and ugly divorce is being just there's at least one, if not two, bad actors in the equation. And that bad actor can be man or woman, lawyer or litigant, and sometimes one or both. And And so, but when you go down that court path, I mean, just everybody loses. And it is, the old cliche that nobody wins but the lawyers. I think it's very apropos. Um, but where I come from quite often is that, our courts allow the family destruction. They've got all these, they like to sit there on their high horse and try to let you know that they're in this for the best for the family and they're the best interest of the child. But they just, allow the family destruction to happen because of their antiquated views and systems and processes that exacerbate the strife and the harm and the destruction of those families. So, I mean, I'm, somewhat fearful as well as hopeful that, our courts can get their act together.
Why do you say hopeful?
Because I believe there's good in all of us, right? And I do believe that the courts, at least the face of it, that the judges, they want to do what's right for, their constituents and the people who appear in front of them. And we all really have, like to think of, that we all have what's in the best interest of the child at heart. Although the best interest of the child is, as any one person's interpretation for any one child. But the fearful part of it, and I'm kind of wrestling with it here in Colorado, is just that there's this bureaucracy behind the courts, and that really kind of help establish what policies and procedures and all this other fun stuff are. And bureaucracy, I think, for anybody has just that negative connotation of apathetic. And where I am in some of my journeys today is that I would throw apathetic on there, arrogant and ignorant, to further characterize that bureaucracy. And but I'll come back to the hopeful part. There's a lot of us out there that are trying to change things, and whether it takes a village or whatever the case is, it takes an army. But there's a lot of people who are like yourself that are really trying to help steer parents down, families down that better path to a more peaceful outcome for all of them, for everybody.
Do you think, or let me rephrase it this way, do you feel that is it more of the lawyers or is it more of the judges that, let's reverse it, instead of the hopefulness, do you feel that it's more on the judges or lawyers that are bringing the court system, the family court system, down?
There's no doubt that the system has evolved for the benefit of the lawyers, for the financial benefit of the lawyers, and to the detriment of families. So that, I'll state that right up front. And certainly you have lawyers who, are in the committees and on the boards and the ones that are advising the court system how that, what legislation or shame on the lawyers, but shame on the judiciary for letting themselves be misinformed and misled like that. Obviously most judges are lawyers in our system today. They I'm pretty sure they really have no requirements of training around family court. When they're holding that position in family court, there's really very limited to no training really required. And that training or that education that they get through their CLEs, those type of things, are provided by lawyers and people from within the system, not from those really with the family experience or so that it's combined. I mean, so where I come to quite often and where at odds with the court because they haven't taken the opportunity to understand where I'm coming from, is that courts, if you think about, so certainly well in excess of 50% of the cost to litigate a divorce is made up in the whole disclosure and discovery realm, right? So people are, lying, cheating, and stealing about the money and their assets. And courts have hundreds of different rules, statutes, laws that they have to follow that, kind of around discovery and disclosure. But they have zero ability to enforce those rules short of one of the parties filing a motion to address it. So that antiquated failure, that antiquated system, paradigm, process, however you want to cut it, is the sole foundational problem with our court system today. All the rules without enforcement only enables bad actors instead of protecting the common good as they were, in theory, put there to do so.
Right. You mentioned, was it CLE?
Yeah, it's what do you call them? Career learning, certified learning education, continuing learning education credits. And so I guess for judges it's called judicial continuing learning education credits, or continuing legal education credits. But yeah, most professions, lawyers, accountants, whoever, have some sort of CLE that they've got to, some sort of continuing education they got to have to continue on with their, credentials. And judges, they have to have theirs. They have to have their judicial continuing legal education credits, but whether or not those are anything specific for family, I don't think so.
Ah, okay. So there's where a little bit of the antiquatedness, if that's such a word, of the family court system is that the updating a judge's training is still not up to date to where we're at today.
I think that's certainly one of the problems out there. Where many of our perceptions, again, around custody and child support and, family are built upon the system that was, put together, 3, 4, 5 decades ago. And so still a lot of the policies and rules and even judicial, rulings are made based upon those, kind of antiquated views. So again, as the system evolved, the court said, hey, well, we're really not in the best position to make these family rulings. We need to find some friends of the court that will give us, better understanding. So in Colorado, we've got certified, child and family investigators, CFIs, and then we got the parental responsibility evaluators, PREs. And so this is just an extension of the court's failures, because now, again, you're only in court because one of those two parties, if not both, are bad actors. They're not there for the benefit of the child. From my perspective, custody is never about what's best for the child. It's always about money, control, and/or hatred. And so, as the courts allow contested custody actions to come into play, they say, okay, well, let's go ahead and give a bone to another profession who can fleece families for big sums of money. As you have to pay, CFIs or PREs to, say whether or not you're a good parent, and which is mostly just a popularity contest between the two. again, now the lawyers are able to kind of kick up their bills along with that, and it's just it's a very problematic. So custody evaluators, to me, again, are more part of the problem as opposed to part of the solution. They are there to divide, not to solve. And again, I keep kind of touching back on some of my themes, but our children in the middle of all these custody battles. I mean, again, you get amicable parents who figure this out every day in and day out, easily enough. They just want to be able to provide for their child and love on their child, and parent as best they can, to a schedule that's convenient for everybody. But when their system of child support, of courts, of lawyers, of custody evaluators, of friends, society says, well, man, we got to fight for custody, because the more custody we have, the more child support we get, or the less we pay. So determining child support by counting overnights, I understand the logic of how it got there, but it could not be more asinine and detrimental to the child. It puts the child in the middle of that conflict to be used as a prize and a pawn. And every child in that situation is abused to one degree or another by one or both parents, and primarily through parental alienation, which is the real deal. So anyway, in my views, again, there's two models of child support out there. There's, the provide model, where, again, most parents want to be able to provide their children with a future where they can thrive in the love of both parents. And then there's the pay model, which is what child support's about, and is really where anybody less than amicable is being steered to go down. It's a path of perpetual conflict that's not good for anybody.
Well, no, and there is, in my view, more fleecing of the men, of the dads, when it comes to child support and when it comes to family courts, because we are still living in a world where you have judges that automatically are going to be biased towards the dads because they feel that the dads aren't nurturers, which is totally BS, and that the courts feel that if you're not going to be the nurturer, you're going to be the one who's going to be paying out of your pockets and then some. I mean, a lot of the guests on this podcast, Carl, especially the dads, have ran into judges that just would not listen to their side, and has cost them lots of wasted money that could be used towards the kids.
Absolutely. Yeah, again, kind of going back to the education thing, and again, you get so many judges that are, have these preconceived notions that, the mother is the nurturer and the dad is the breadwinner, right? That just doesn't represent our demographics today. And so, I mean, I was in court for 9 years. My ex and I probably spent well in excess of $300,000.
Oh my gosh!
And again, courts allowing it, but and through that journey, I've been down to state capitol, lobbying for legislation. Today I'm on the Child Support Commission Review Board. But more men lose their relationships with their children than women do. That makes sense?
Yes. But unfortunately, we're still a little bit in the dark ages still.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are. I mean, so again, I mentioned kind of I got my, I'm got several hats I'm wearing these days.
Right.
I'm on the Child Support Commission for Child Support Review Commission for Colorado. I'm a parent representative, so and part of my and I just started on that. I had one meeting. I'll have my next meeting next week. But I let it be known that I didn't plan on just being that token parent there with all the lawyers, that thing. And I'm also the co-chair of National Parents Organization for Colorado, and I think that organization kind of historically was a father's rights, but several years ago it kind of moved more to being gender neutral. And now with my startup called Split Smart, certainly as I'm out there in the whole legal tech arena or in the divorce arena, certainly more of the women come across as kind of having a corner on the empathetic market than men. So that's just another one of my challenges of messaging and work that I've got to kind of continue on with. But I mean, we'll get on down. I mean, we can get on down into the boy crisis again. So fatherlessness. To me, fatherlessness is the greatest social ill facing our country today. And the system exacerbates the problem.
How so?
Child support. It's a price tag on your kid's head. So the more custody that so it is certainly child support. I would also liken certainly the concepts of child support. First of all, let's make sure everybody kind of understands what the history of child support is. Child support was established in the 1970s purely as a welfare recovery system, meaning that the feds were trying to offload their financial burden of supporting single low-income mothers. Well, in their brilliance, they decided that they'd try to get reimbursed for that welfare assistance from the low-income fathers. As brilliant as all that is. And at the time, so when child support came about, it was the congressional intent was only to serve those families on welfare or at risk of welfare, not at the higher income brackets. The two other premises of child support at the time, and which are still very pervasive today, is that every father had to be forced to provide for their child, and that no mother could provide for themselves, much less their children, without the help of man or government. So think about how offensive both of those statements are today. But that is the underlying basis of our child support system. It puts a price tag on the head of the child, where for most states, if you're going down the pay child support paradigm path, child support is calculated based upon the number of overnights the child is with each parent. So you can have a perfectly reasonable couple that sees a 75-25 parenting plan that works well for their family, but because dad travels or whatever the case may be, schedules, but dad sees the child support guidelines, he said, nope, I got to have 50-50. I ain't gonna pay all that. So not only are the child support guidelines asinine from that perspective of trying to calculate child support based upon the number of overnights with each parent, but then you add more fuel to the fire of trying to incorporate lifestyle language. And that's where we really step up the wrongfulness, how wrong child support is. That's really where it becomes punitive, where it intertwines more spousal support than it does child support. And so, it's just, and that's where you get such these lopsided, you know, awards and judgments of ridiculous amounts to pay for child support. Um, and if you'll bear with me, I'll tell you a little bit more about that.
Well, what I want to know, Carl, is what, in your view, would be a better or best way for child support?
One is we stop counting overnights to determine child support. Two, we 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 establish in state statutes a rebuttable presumption of equal parenting. So that basically means that that you're going to have 50-50 parenting unless you can prove that the other is unfit. Now that really gets all that language really gets the lawyers up in a roar, because then that just takes away a lot of their billing hours. But the reality of it, what you're trying to do with that rebuttable presumption of equal parenting is just you're just trying to create a backstop. So again, you got amicable parents who figure out a schedule that works for them all day long, every day, every of the year, where the schedules are not necessarily equal because it's just not practical for their family. And because they've reached these agreements and they're not worried about child support guidelines or calculations, they're just sharing expenses and making their own contributions to the child's savings as they go along. They're in a much more peaceful type environment. So if we kind of have, just by default, 50-50 shared equal parenting, and then we have the guidelines, based upon 50-50 parenting, and regardless of what the overnights are, then we've taken off the financial incentive of child support. We've removed the financial incentive of custody to a large degree. Now, again, get us a rebuttable presumption and then calculate all child support based upon 50-50 time of the child. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't have a parenting plan that's complete and schedules that are completely different. It could be 100-0 or 90-10 or 75-25. Because the biggest factor, the biggest problem for our children is the conflict. Parts of my philosophies are, two pieces of my philosophy are, the more we can separate time and money, custody from child support, the more easily it is to solve both. The more that we can distinguish between adult benefit and child benefit, the more conflict we can remove from the overall equation. And I'm also a believer, again, that most everybody wants to be able to provide for their children to the best of their ability. But not a single one amongst us wants to provide $10 to our ex to support their lifestyle through child support. That's what spousal support's for. And if that's appropriate, then that's appropriate. But when you intertwine spousal with child support, you have conflict, you have litigation, you have child abuse. So
what is your thoughts on, you have one parent living in one state, another parent living in another state? How would your support work that way? As far as, obviously there are times where you can't do 50-50.
Right.
It would be hard enough to do 100-0. So what does that model look like for you?
So I within Split Smart, I basically have two parts to my child support model. One is an expense sharing part, and in that, you basically, each parent is kind of going through and given a line item budget for each child as to what they will spend for that child. We're not including rent, mortgage, adult cars, travel, or anything else like that. Any of the lifestyle things that any of the things that I would associate with lifestyle. But if we focus on all the true expenses, and that very well can include food and clothing and certainly education and medical and and even cell phones and game or the PlayStations, whatever the case may be. So you can throw anything you want to in that pot of what the expense is. Then you break it up by category of medical, education, miscellaneous, and extracurricular. And then you total those up. And then you start to decide who's going to share, how much of the expense you're going to share. I mean, so you're going to share the expense 50-50 or 75-25 or 100-0. And the idea is there, again, as you focus on the true child expense and the true child benefit, most all of us embrace that more willingly. Most all of us embrace that responsibility more willingly. But again, as soon as you start to intertwine the spousal support in there, then that's where the conflict and the problems come. So because the father who's living, maybe the kids are with the dad during the summer and in Ohio and with mom during the school year here in Colorado, again, maybe dad makes more than mom does. And so they may very well say, okay, well, he'll pick up 75-25 on education, 75-25 on medical, and maybe 50-50 on extracurricular and miscellaneous, whatever the case may be. So they can figure that out. But again, the more that it's about the child specific, then the more responsibility everybody is willing to embrace. The second piece of it is savings, whether it's your 529, their first new car, or just spending allowance, or spending money or allowance. Again, most of us who have the wherewithal want to be able to provide for our children, beyond just sharing expenses. But in no state do the statutes give parents credit for that. Again, the refrain that I hear repeated from time to time again is, I'll give $2,000 to my kid's college fund, but I won't give her $20. There's a big point there. So solve it, and so that's what I believe. And so then you do have parents who may not, that have the wherewithal, but still refuse to, to take up their, pay their responsibility. And, that sucks, and that's shame on them. But you also, and so assuming that that's the father, and then you have the mother again when she's in a kind of above low income or even middle income, she just, she may just figure out, may just decide, and I've talked to plenty of mothers like this, that it's just not worth the hassle. It's not worth the conflict, not worth trying to chase him down. I'd love to have any support that he can provide. I'd love to have the help. He should be helping, but it ain't worth it to me to worry about him. I'm just going to go take care of this myself. And so they make a conscious choice just to, okay, we'd rather just forget about all that conflict and just, focus on doing what I can do.
Well, I'm fascinated with anybody that comes up with an app to help the world of divorce, because I was divorced in 2008. I don't think we had apps. I don't remember. I'm old. So tell us, Carl, more about Split Smart. Let's dive into that. What is Split Smart? How does it help? What are, maybe even talk to us about some of the features of it?
Yeah, appreciate that, Tommy. Yeah, it is, splitsmart.com is first of all where you go find it. And there's a couples page that is has two explainer videos on it, which I highly recommend. They're kind of lengthy, and they're 8.5 minutes each, but one for money and one for kids. I just to kind of have that reference there, but so certainly, as I mentioned, I had my 9 year in court. The light bulb came on for me, and as we entered the last round, you have to do mediation before you go to a hearing. And in that mediation, I've got the email from my wife, of my ex-wife, of her disclosures, and I could immediately see that her disclosures have been falsified. Her taxes have been altered. Her bank statements were screenshots that have been altered. But the mediator just kind of shrugs her shoulders, says, "Well, I can't police that," and rightfully so, she couldn't. But my only recourse at that time, or my only recourse in this paradigm of the court's failures, is to file another motion, another large hurdle, a barrier to justice type thing, of expense, of legal question, of time, and it's just adding to conflict and more wasted money. So instead of filing that motion, I just kind of had to accept my fate and move on. And and so, but that's where my career, my 30 some odd year career in software, that's where the light bulb came on for me, that there had to be a better way to solve discovery. And the discovery in divorce is completely broken system, and that's where the lawyers fleece us so much, and that's where the courts should be able to control and stop it from happening. So anyway, long story short is, on the money side of things, I've got an intake system where you're very efficiently kind of identify your incomes, assets, liabilities, and expenses. And as you identify each income, asset, liability, I'm creating a common repository folder for the documents that you want to provide to support each one of those things. Now, when you have a fairly amicable couple, they're not going to be as worried so much about that documentation. But as things get a little bit more hostile, they're going to want you to update your pay stubs folder every month type thing. But there's just the vast amount of gamesmanship and deceit and just BS that goes on around discovery. It's just, I think I solved that problem. I think I solved over half the expense of a litigated divorce, although I hadn't had it tested that way yet. So that's on the money side. And so the output from the intake of that is I create a marital worksheet. That marital worksheet just itemized listing of your income, of your assets and liabilities, and so organized for settlement and or judicial efficiency. So I believe there's 4 steps in divorce. You got to make your disclosures, you got to organize your stuff so you know what you got and what you want. Then you negotiate and settle. So I get Split Smart does those first 2 steps of it, so easily, time efficiently. And right now it's just costing $80 for kind of a license for the couple to do just that. So $80 as compared to thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars for that. Then shifting over to the kids side of things, really is where my heart is. Again, I just think that kids are put in the middle of this far too often because a parent, one or both, gets tripped up by their emotions. They get tripped up by bad advice from a friend or a lawyer, and then more often than not, they're getting tripped up by their own mental health issues of narcissists or borderline personalities. And when those come to play, that's where everything just spirals out of control, and everybody loses, especially the kids, every time. So I've got a very unique approach to the parenting plan, which incorporates the schedules. But we've kind of got a line item negotiation approach to each individual item. You know, whether it's the areas of decision making, the different types of schedules from summer to during the school year, to vacations, holidays, and then about 15 miscellaneous things of which you can, you know, add more things to it. But you're okay. So I've got this line item negotiation approach there, and so on each one of these, so and I frequently use Marge and Homer Simpson as my use case. But Homer is able to make a proposal on each individual line item, or he's able to accept or reject the proposal from Marge. And so that's a big deal as we kind of go through this, because what I wholeheartedly believe is that a written position softens a verbal stance. Verbal stances are often, you know, clouded by emotional outburst. You know, people can show up and say, "This is what I want," you know, then that's, you know, just not within reason. But as you write down your position on any individual item, you want your words to reflect that you are a good person, that you're in this for your children, you're not in this for yourself. And if somebody else is going to see those words, you're going to want that. Most of us want that reflected, that reflection of us in our words. So that in and of itself helps soften things away from being punitive or just, you know, trying for control or whatever the case may be. Softens it to more of a middle, to emphasize that, yes, we are in this for the kids. So again, you can kind of, most parents, regardless of how amicable or hostile they may be, should be able to get through most of this stuff on their own. But for where they've still got some of the more difficult issues that are outstanding, then I've got kind of just a working document where Homer's and Marge's positions are listed side by side on each individual item. So when they get to mediation, now the mediator is able to start at the 50-yard line instead of the other end zone. And, you know, and everybody wins in that. And again, you certainly get a much more beneficial parenting plan and schedules for the entire family, not just one. So
I want to go back, Carl, right before you had the aha moment with Split Smart, and you said, as you were sitting in court, you accepted your fate. Was it you're accepting your fate because enough was enough? You're mentally, physically done?
Mentally, physically, and financially done.
And then that's when the aha hit that,
yeah,
can't keep allowing this to happen.
Well, the aha hit that it's the court's fault. It's the court's fault. They got all these rules, but no ability to enforce those rules, no ability to ensure your compliance. And that lack of ability to ensure your compliance enables a bad actor. It spirals the costs and conflict and litigation of divorce out of control. That one feature, that one reality is the whole failure of our entire family court system, in my perspective. So, yeah, you know, certainly as we left that, you know, in the last hearing, I was chasing my wife had lied on quite a few things of which we would not have been at that hearing had she not. And so I was chasing her for legal fees, which would have been suitable because we wouldn't have been there had she not been lying on all this stuff. And the judge just kind of looks at us like we're both to blame for the conflict. That he has no responsibility for it. It's our fault because we want to fight. So I didn't get awarded that money. You know, again, it's back to the antiquated systems and antiquated processes and antiquated thinking of our court system today.
So with Split Smart, has anybody here in Colorado, as far as lawyers recommended it for you? Judges?
Not on the lawyer side, and so some of the conversations, I'm really just now kind of coming out to market, so I'm getting a good response from mediators, from mediators more so than really any lawyers, because change is hard. Change is people are always afraid of change. But certainly some of the conversations that I had with both sitting and ex judges, that if I could do all that I'm talking about, that if Splitsmark could do what I'm saying it can, that I could reduce the overall volume of motions discovery or contempt related motions filed in court by 80 to 90%, and that the self-represented litigants would be able to come into court hearings organized and prepared and ready for that day, which is a constant judicial complaint. I've made a couple of references to my being kind of at odds with the state court bureaucracy. I mean, I just filed a complaint letter with their chief legal counsel today that complaining that there's one bureaucrat in there just because his personal animus towards me is not allowing the SCAO, the State Court Administrator's Office, to even understand what my proposal is. Not allowing them to do their due diligence. His personal animus towards me, because I've been an activist or advocate or agitator or however you want to look at it, he's betraying the public trust. And so I've asked for there to be a professional accountability review and ethics review of this individual. And so I'm opening up a bag of worms, and I don't know where it's going to end. But the bureaucracy is a large part to blame here. And you got bureaucrats that are apathetic, arrogant, and ignorant to the realities of what families are going for, and that the system continues to evolve for the benefit of lawyers, not families.
Unfortunately, I 100% agree with you. And some of our past guests who have been past lawyers also have echoed the same sentiments, that the fact that you bring a case to a lawyer, and a lot of them, and I will generalize, and a lot of them are looking more at the dollar sign than, again, like you've said today, Carl, they're not looking at the family unit. They're not looking at the kids. They're not putting the kids first. They're not in it for the kids. They're in it for the almighty dollar. And it is frustrating. And it is, disheartening that, family court isn't about family. It's about the almighty dollar. And, I for those of you who remember records, I know I sound like a broken record because I've mentioned that several times on this podcast over 170 odd episodes. I'm sure I've mentioned that the family court system is broken. Family lawyers are broken. They're not going to turn a client away saying you're crazy. They're going to do, again, what's the best interest of their client, which isn't always the best interest of the family. So I do, Carl. I feel your pain, and I know a lot of the listeners to this podcast feel your pain as well.
Yeah, and so fortunately, I've had the wherewithal and family support to kind of to find a better day for myself. And, and I feel like I am doing a good job of trying to make lemonade out of lemons type thing. But very much part of it is trying to hold this system accountable, and which we know there's just no accountability in family court. And then I do think that, you probably had a lot of those same lawyers I mean, everybody were the mediators or divorce coaches. So there's a lot of people, and the system wants us really kind of going down this alternative dispute resolution to divorce. Anything outside of court, the courts are really happy for you to do that. And so there is more technology. There's more people of that mindset. But there is quite a few divorce lawyers that, again, they're going to be a zealot for their client because that they can spin up the bills. But also another reality with divorce lawyers is that they have the highest percentage of clients that do not pay them, as well as the highest percentage of clients who end up filing a grievance or malpractice against them because those bills spun out of control and their client was no longer getting the outcomes that they thought that they would get. And so those bad actors, or the behaviors of the bad actors that spun up the billing hours, are a negative impact to the lawyer's profitability. Unfortunate fact is that lawyers have already built in a certain percentage of that into their billing rates, and there you go. And so they're okay charging you $400 or $500 an hour, and just knowing, well, they'll make it up in volume.
Well, I will say for the record, Carl, that the attorney that took on my child custody case, I love him, and I'm so grateful for him. It cost me a lot of money. It cost a lot of emotional fortitude trying to figure things out. But I am very blessed. I'm very grateful for him, his staff. The funny thing is, I remember on LinkedIn one day that my former wife's attorney showed up on, this might be somebody you want to connect with. I'm like, oh, hell no. Hell no. And on that note, Carl, how can people get in touch with you, learn more about SplitSmart?
Splitsmart.com.
Any other social media you want to give a shout out to?
SplitSmart app, Twitter. So yeah, I'm trying to pick up my pace on the whole social media thing. It's a tough bear.
It is. It is. Before I let you go, Carl, one last question. The last question is, what has changed for you the past 12 months? What has changed for you these past 12 months?
I'm going to take that back to be about 20 months because last year I really was focused on forgiveness. And, I still get the shots across my bow every once in a while, and I still mess up back, kind of falling back into those old patterns of myself of reacting instead of responding. And, I think that has helped contribute a lot to my better mindset these days. I feel good about the work that I'm doing, about trying to help other people. I'm not blaming my ex as much as I am more so the court system, although my ex was very much, the instigator here. But it's I'm honest. I'm really excited about what SplitSmart brings to this world, and it's my life's passion to kind of keep other families from having a fate similar to mine.
Wonderful. Carl Roberts, advocate, lobbyist for the Family Court and Child Support Reform, Colorado co-chair for National Parents Organization. Carl, I'm so grateful for the work you're doing. I'm so grateful for you coming on this podcast and our connections. I think that some of our connections besides yourself are trying. Obviously, you are doing good work out there. Keep up your great work. I'm super proud of what you're doing, Carl.
Tommy, thank you for your time, your interest in your words, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon, buddy.